Happy Monday, everybody. This week we are talking about approach. Those of us that have shy dogs who are a little hesitant to approach us or other family members, we'll talk about some tips for reinforcing approach and trying not to punish it. This is just for you. I wouldn't recommend training your fearful dog to approach strangers. So this is for training your dog to approach you or your family. All right, let's take a look. All right, so the problem, shy dog won't approach you. Just 3 tips for building this approach behavior. The problem, your dog won't approach you or won't approach you all the way. A lot of us with shy dogs may encounter this problem, especially early on after adoption. So what can you do? 3 tips. Number 1, do work with a positive reinforcement trainer. So if you're not already working with somebody, I highly recommend working with a professional who uses food, toys, things the dog loves to reinforce behaviors you want. So number 1, work with a trainer. Number 2, if you're going to be using treats, do toss the treat behind the dog when they approach you. If you're trying to reinforce approach, toss that treat behind the dog so they can move away from you to get the treat. That not only sets them up for their next approach that you can then reinforce, but it keeps the duration short that they're really close to you, gives them a little break. And number 3, and this is important, don't punish approach by trying to get more. And hopefully when I show you a few examples, this will make sense. This is really common. So how might you punish approach? We are all guilty of this. Don't beat yourself up if you find you're doing these things. But if you can become aware of them and stop doing them, it'll help your training. Number 1, resist the urge to place that treat between you and the dog to lure them closer. So if the dog approaches you, you don't want to say, oh, good job, you can have a treat for that, but you have to come even closer to get it. No, toss that treat behind the dog so they can move away and try again. The number 2 thing to avoid, the number 2 way you might be punishing approach, is to trying to hand feed. And this is kind of similar to number 1. So the dog approaches you part way, and you say, oh, come here and get a treat. You know, good job approaching me, but you have to come closer and take this food from my hand. That could also be punishing to a fearful dog. So at this point, if your dog isn't approaching you all the way quite willingly, they're probably not ready to take food from your hand. So number 2, don't try to hand feed. Number 3, trying to pet them. And this is tough. I know we all love our dogs, and especially when you've got a fearful one, you really want to cuddle them and pet them, and it's hard when you can't do that. But I've seen time and again people accidentally punishing their fearful dog's approach by trying to get a scratch in or a pet. If they're not ready to approach you all the way, if they're just getting started with that, reaching out your hand to kind of sneak in a pet is quite likely to punish that approach as well. All right, so let's look at a video example of someone doing a lovely job with their approach training. Okay, so the problem, dog is afraid to approach you. Let's look at a foster dad doing several things just right with their foster dog. First thing the foster dad does right is tossing those treats behind the dog. Not trying to hand feed. See how we're getting some nicer body language already in a session a few days later. Don't try to pet. And don't try to lure closer. Every time he's tossing that treat away, and we're getting some lovely waggies, loose body language. That's what you would like to see. This should be a fun, low pressure game for your dog. All right, folks, so I hope that was helpful. Just a reminder, those 3 take-home points, the 3 what to do's, do work with a positive reinforcement trainer, do toss treats behind the dog to reward their approach, and try not to punish their approach by trying to get a little more after they've offered you something. Take what they offer. Don't try to get more by luring them closer with a treat or trying to sneak in a pet. All right, I hope that helps. You can get more confidence building tips for your fearful dog by signing up for our weekly newsletter. Go to this link, dogkindtraining.com/newsletter, and you'll get these tips delivered to